The people who effortlessly maintain life-changing habits know something that the rest of us are missing. It's not superhuman willpower. It's not perfect self-discipline or genetic advantages. And it's definitely not what they teach in productivity books or habit tracking apps. What they understand is something that turns the entire concept of habit formation on its head and makes what seems impossible suddenly inevitable. In the next few minutes, I'm going to share something that might sound impossible at first, but by the end, you'll understand why your past failures with habits might actually be your greatest gift for developing the kind of automatic behaviors that transform everything. Stay with me, because this changes everything about how you approach not just habits, but the very nature of lasting change and personal transformation. The habit trap. Have you ever noticed how the harder you try to force new habits, the faster they seem to fall apart? There's something happening beneath the surface that most of us miss because we're focused on willpower and discipline instead of understanding what actually makes behaviors stick. Picture this. January 1st arrives and you're filled with motivation. This is your year. You're going to exercise every morning, eat healthy, meditate daily, read more books, journal consistently. You create detailed schedules, download tracking apps, clear your calendar for all these new routines. You're ready to transform your life through sheer force of will. For the first week, maybe two, you're unstoppable. You wake up early, hit the gym, prepare healthy meals, check off every item on your habit list. You feel like you finally cracked the code. This time is different. This time you have the discipline to stick with it. Then life happens. You sleep through your alarm one morning. Work gets busy and you skip the gym. You grab fast food instead of your planned healthy lunch. One missed day becomes two, then three. That perfect streak you were so proud of lies broken, and suddenly the whole system feels pointless. You blame yourself for lacking willpower. You think successful people must have some kind of discipline gene you're missing. You download another app, try another system, make another plan. But this cycle repeats. Initial enthusiasm, followed by inevitable breakdown, leaving you feeling like you're just not the kind of person who can maintain good habits. Here's what's really happening. You're treating habits like external impositions you must force onto your life, rather than natural extensions of who you're becoming. You're approaching them with what I call a disciplined mindset, believing that habits require constant effort and vigilance to maintain. I understand this struggle completely. We live in a culture obsessed with quick transformations and dramatic lifestyle overhauls. Every advertisement, every success story, every motivational message suggests that change should be immediate and total. So when our actual experience involves setbacks, inconsistency, and gradual progress, we assume we're doing something wrong. But what if the problem isn't your lack of willpower or your inability to stick to routines? What if the problem is how we've been taught about habit formation itself? Most of us approach habits backward. We focus on the behavior we want to perform instead of the identity we want to embody. We try to force actions that don't align with who we currently are, then wonder why they feel so difficult to maintain. The truth is, lasting habits don't come from discipline. They emerge from identity. When you see yourself as someone who exercises regularly, going to the gym doesn't require willpower, it's just what you do. When you identify as a reader, picking up a book feels natural rather than forced. Think about the habits you already maintain effortlessly. Brushing your teeth, checking your phone, making coffee in the morning. You don't need motivation or tracking apps for these behaviors because they become part of who you are. They're automatic expressions of your identity rather than external requirements you impose on yourself. What if building new habits worked the same way? What if instead of trying to force behaviors through discipline, you could create the conditions where good habits emerge naturally from a clear sense of who you're becoming? When was the last time you asked yourself, what kind of person do I want to be? And what would someone like that naturally do each day? These questions point towards something revolutionary, The possibility of habits that stick because they flow from your authentic identity rather than external pressure. The story that changes everything. Let me tell you about Sarah, a busy marketing executive who came to me completely frustrated with her inability to maintain any consistent health habits. She tried every fitness program, every diet plan, every morning routine she could find. Nothing lasted more than a few weeks. "I know what I should be doing," she told me during our first conversation. "I know exercise is important. I know I should eat better and get more sleep, but I keep failing at it over and over again. I must just lack discipline." When I asked Sarah to describe her current habits, she listed off all the things she wasn't doing. Not exercising enough, not eating well, not meditating, not journaling. She defined herself entirely by her failures rather than her successes. But when I asked her to tell me about habits she did maintain consistently, something interesting emerged. Sarah never missed her weekly coffee date with her best friend. She always remembered to call her elderly mother every Sunday. She consistently stayed late at work to help colleagues with challenging projects. "Those don't count," Sarah said when I pointed this out. "Those aren't real habits. I do those things because I care about them." That's when I realized what was happening. Sarah had plenty of discipline and consistency, she just wasn't applying it to behaviors aligned with her authentic values and identity. The habits she maintained effortlessly were expressions of who she truly was: a caring friend, a devoted daughter, a supportive colleague. The health habits she struggled with weren't connected to any deeper sense of identity or purpose. She was trying to exercise because she thought she should, not because it aligned with who she wanted to become. Over the following months, we worked on shifting Sarah's approach completely. Instead of focusing on specific behaviors, we explored who she wanted to be. Instead of asking, "What habits should I have?" we asked, "What kind of person do I want to become, and what would that person naturally do?" Sarah discovered that what she truly wanted was to be someone who takes excellent care of herself so she can show up fully for the people she loves. Exercise wasn't about looking a certain way or following shoulds. It was about having the energy and vitality to be the friend, daughter, and colleague she wanted to be. This identity shift changed everything. Instead of forcing herself through workouts she hated, Sarah found physical activities that felt like self-care rather than punishment. Instead of following restrictive diets, she began choosing foods that made her feel energized and clear. Instead of treating sleep as optional, she prioritized rest as an essential part of taking care of herself. The transformation was remarkable, not because Sarah developed superhuman discipline, but because her habits finally aligned with who she actually was. She didn't have to force herself to exercise because someone who takes excellent care of herself naturally moves her body regularly. She didn't have to resist unhealthy food because someone committed to vitality naturally chooses nourishing options. Most importantly, Sarah's habits became self-reinforcing rather than self-defeating. Each healthy choice strengthened her identity as someone who prioritizes self-care, which made the next healthy choice feel more natural and automatic. This reveals something profound. Lasting habits don't come from overriding who you are. They emerge from becoming clearer about who you are and allowing that identity to express itself through consistent action. Think of how a tree grows. It doesn't force itself to reach towards sunlight or extend its roots deeper. These behaviors emerge naturally from its essential nature as a growing organism. When your habits align with your authentic identity in the same way, they become as natural and automatic as a tree reaching toward light. This is what it means to build habits that stick. Not forcing yourself into predetermined molds, but discovering what naturally wants to emerge from who you're becoming and creating supportive conditions for that emergence. The revolutionary understanding. Here's what transforms everything about habits. The behaviors that stick aren't the ones you force through willpower. They're the ones that reinforce your desired identity with each repetition. Most people think habit formation is about repetition and discipline. Do something consistently for a certain number of days and it becomes automatic. But what if I told you that focusing on repetition is actually why most habits fail? When you approach habits as behaviors to repeat, you're treating them as external impositions on your life. You have to remember to do them, motivate yourself to continue them, and constantly fight against the resistance they create. This approach requires enormous ongoing effort because the habits never become truly integrated into who you are. But when you approach habits as identity reinforcement, as votes for the kind of person you want to become, everything changes. Each time you go for a walk, you're not just exercising, you're casting a vote for your identity as someone who prioritizes health. Each time you choose water over soda, you're not just making a healthy choice, you're reinforcing your identity as someone who nourishes their body well. This identity-based approach works because it aligns with how your brain actually forms lasting behavioral patterns. Your subconscious mind is constantly looking for evidence of who you are, and it uses that evidence to predict what you'll do next. When your actions consistently reinforce a desired identity, your brain begins to automate behaviors that match that identity. Here's the revolutionary part. You don't need to wait until you feel like the kind of person who has good habits. You can begin acting like that person immediately, and your sense of identity will shift to match your actions. Identity and behavior exist in a reinforcing loop. Your actions shape your identity, and your identity shapes your actions. This means that every single repetition of a desired behavior serves two purposes. It creates the immediate benefit of the action itself, and it strengthens your identity as the kind of person who performs that action. Over time, the identity becomes so strong that the behavior feels automatic and effortless. But here's what most people miss. The power isn't in perfect consistency, it's in quickly returning to your desired identity after setbacks. Someone with strong, healthy habits doesn't never miss a workout or never eat junk food. They just don't let one missed workout become a week of inactivity. And they don't let one poor food choice become a month of poor eating. They have what I call identity resilience. Their sense of who they are remains stable even when their actions temporarily don't match their ideals. They see setbacks as exceptions rather than evidence of failure, which allows them to return quickly to identity-consistent behaviors. While most people abandon habits after minor setbacks because they see failure as evidence they're not that kind of person, masters understand that developing strong identity-based habits is about the overall direction of your actions, not perfect execution. Like a river that continues flowing toward the ocean despite obstacles in its path, your habits can maintain their essential direction even when circumstances temporarily divert them. The key is staying connected to the identity you're building rather than getting caught up in day-to-day performance. This is what creates habits that truly stick. Not perfect discipline, but clear identity and the flexibility to express that identity consistently over time, regardless of changing circumstances. Foundation 1. Clarity. Before you can build lasting habits, you need absolute clarity about who you want to become and why that identity matters to you. This goes far deeper than setting goals or choosing behaviors. It's about connecting with your deepest values and envisioning the kind of person you want to be. Most people skip this foundation and jump straight to behavioral changes, which is why their habits feel forced and unsustainable. Without clear identity as your foundation, habits become arbitrary rules you impose on yourself rather than natural expressions of who you are. Clarity begins with honest self-reflection about your current identity and desired identity. How do you see yourself now? What stories do you tell about who you are and what you're capable of? Many people discover they've been carrying limiting identities that make good habits feel impossible or inauthentic. Then, explore who you want to become. Not what you want to achieve or accomplish, but who you want to be as a person. What qualities do you want to embody? How do you want to show up in your relationships, your work, your daily life? What kind of energy do you want to bring to the world? This desired identity should feel authentic and inspiring rather than imposed from external expectations. You're not trying to become who you think you should be, but who you genuinely want to become. The difference is crucial. Shoulds create resistance, while authentic desires create natural motivation. Once you have clarity about your desired identity, you can begin identifying what someone with that identity would naturally do. If you want to embody vibrant health, what daily practices would someone with that identity maintain? If you want to be a lifelong learner, what habits would reinforce that identity? If you want to be someone who creates meaningful work, what routines would support that identity? This process transforms habits from external requirements into identity expressions. Instead of, I should exercise because it's good for me, it becomes, I exercise because I'm someone who prioritizes my health and vitality. The behavior is the same, but the underlying motivation is completely different. Clarity also involves understanding the deeper why behind your desired identity. What will becoming this person allow you to do, contribute, or experience? How will this identity serve not just you, but the people you care about? When habits connect to larger purposes and values, they become much easier to maintain through challenging periods. Write down your desired identity in clear, specific language. I am someone who statements work well because they create present tense identity rather than future goals. The more specific and personal you can make these statements, the more powerful they become as guides for daily behavior. This clarity becomes your North Star for habit formation. Every potential habit can be evaluated based on whether it reinforces your desired identity or not. This makes decision-making much simpler and ensures that your habits work together to support the person you're becoming, rather than pulling you in different directions. Foundation 2. Environment. Your environment has far more influence on your behavior than your willpower ever will. The most disciplined person in the world will struggle to maintain good habits in an environment designed to promote bad ones, while someone with average self-control can maintain excellent habits in a well-designed environment. This is perhaps the most underestimated aspect of habit formation. Most people try to change their behavior while leaving their environment exactly the same, then wonder why they struggle with consistency. But your environment is constantly shaping your behavior through what researchers call choice architecture, the way options are presented and made available to you. Environmental design for habits works on multiple levels. Physical environment involves arranging your spaces to make good habits easier and bad habits harder. If you want to exercise regularly, lay out your workout clothes the night before. If you want to eat healthier, keep nutritious foods visible and convenient while storing less healthy options out of sight. But environment goes beyond physical spaces to include social environment, the people you spend time with, and the conversations you have regularly. If you're surrounded by people who embody the identity you want to develop, their behaviors will naturally influence yours. If your social circle doesn't support your desired changes, you may need to intentionally seek out new communities that do. Digital environment is increasingly important in our connected world. The apps on your phone, the websites you visit, the social media accounts you follow, all of these are constantly influencing your thoughts and behaviors. Curating your digital environment to support your desired identity is just as important as organizing your physical space. Temporal environment involves structuring your time to support good habits. This means identifying when your energy and willpower are naturally highest and scheduling your most important habits during those times. It also means creating clear transitions and rituals that help you shift between different types of activities. The key to environmental design is making good habits as frictionless as possible while adding friction to habits you want to avoid. Every small obstacle you remove from desired behaviors and every small barrier you add to undesired behaviors compounds over time to create significant behavioral changes. Start by auditing your current environment honestly. What behaviors does your physical space promote? What influences are you exposing yourself to through media and social connections? What temporal patterns support or undermine your desired habits? Then begin making small environmental changes that align with your desired identity. You don't need to transform everything at once. Even small environmental tweaks can have surprisingly large impacts on behavior over time. Remember that environmental design isn't about creating perfect conditions that eliminate all temptation or difficulty. It's about creating supportive conditions that make identity-consistent behaviors feel natural and sustainable, rather than forced or heroic. Foundation 3. Systems. Sustainable habits require systems that can adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining their essential function. Most people create rigid routines that work perfectly under ideal conditions, but fall apart the moment anything unexpected happens. Systems thinking for habits means designing flexible frameworks that can maintain their core purpose even when the specific behaviors need to adapt. Instead of, "I will run for 30 minutes every morning at 6 a.m., a systems approach might be, "I will move my body in some way every day, with running being my preferred option when circumstances allow." This flexibility is crucial because life is inherently unpredictable. Travel, illness, work demands, family obligations, all of these will occasionally disrupt even the best planned routines. When you have rigid habits, these disruptions feel like failures that derail your entire system. When you have flexible systems, disruptions become opportunities to practice adapting while maintaining your core identity.
Effective habit systems include what I call minimum viable habits, the smallest possible version of your desired behavior that you can maintain even on your worst days. If your ideal is a 45-minute workout, your minimum viable habit might be doing 10 push-ups. If your ideal is writing 1,000 words, your minimum might be writing one sentence. These minimum viable habits serve two crucial functions. They maintain your identity as someone who performs the behavior even when you can't do the full version. And they often lead naturally into more extensive engagement once you get started. Many of your best workout days will start from just committing to the minimum viable version. Systems also include what researchers call implementation intentions, specific if-then plans for how you'll handle common obstacles and challenging situations. If you travel frequently, you need a clear plan for maintaining your exercise habits while away from home. If you have a demanding work schedule, you need strategies for maintaining healthy eating when time is limited. The key is anticipating likely challenges and creating predetermined responses rather than relying on in-the-moment willpower when you're already stressed or tired. This advanced planning prevents disruptions from becoming permanent derailments. Another crucial element of habit systems is what I call progressive challenge, gradually increasing the difficulty or complexity of your habits as they become more established. This keeps the habits engaging and prevents the plateau effect that often leads to boredom and abandonment. But progression should feel natural rather than forced. You're not trying to constantly do more for the sake of doing more. You're allowing your habits to evolve in ways that continue to reinforce your desired identity while providing appropriate challenge and growth. Creating effective systems requires understanding your own patterns, preferences, and typical obstacles. What times of day do you have the most energy? What circumstances tend to derail your good intentions? What modifications would allow you to maintain habits during busy or stressful periods? This self-knowledge allows you to design systems that work with your natural tendencies rather than against them, creating sustainable frameworks that can support your desired identity over months and years rather than just weeks. Foundation 4. Integration. The final foundation involves learning to integrate new habits seamlessly into your existing life, rather than treating them as additional burdens or separate activities that require extra time and energy. Most people approach habit formation by trying to add new behaviors on top of everything they're already doing. This creates immediate time and energy conflicts that make the new habits feel overwhelming and unsustainable from the start. Integration means finding ways to weave desired behaviors into activities you're already doing, or replacing less beneficial habits with more beneficial ones,
rather than just adding more to your plate. This approach works with your existing life rhythms rather than fighting against them. Habit stacking is one powerful integration technique, attaching new habits to established routines that you already perform automatically. After I pour my coffee, I will write in my journal. After I sit down at my desk, I will review my priorities for the day. After I brush my teeth at night, I will set out clothes for tomorrow. The key is choosing trigger habits that are already rock solid and occur at the right time and location for your new habit. The established habit serves as a natural cue for the new behavior, eliminating the need for separate reminders or motivation. Habit substitution involves replacing existing habits with more beneficial versions, rather than trying to eliminate behaviors entirely. Instead of mindlessly scrolling social media, you listen to educational podcasts. Instead of watching random TV shows, you watch documentaries related to your interests. Instead of grabbing fast food, you prepare simple, healthy meals. This approach works because it maintains the same general behavioral pattern while upgrading the specific content. You're not fighting against existing neural pathways, but redirecting them toward more beneficial outcomes. Integration also involves understanding how different habits interact with and support each other. When you exercise regularly, you often naturally want to eat healthier and sleep better. When you meditate consistently, you may find yourself making more thoughtful decisions throughout the day. When you read regularly, you may discover new interests that inspire additional positive habits. Recognizing these natural connections allows you to design habit ecosystems where each behavior reinforces and supports the others rather than competing for limited time and energy. This creates positive feedback loops that make the entire system more sustainable. Another aspect of integration is learning to see your habits as expressions of self-care rather than self-discipline. When habits feel like punishment or additional burdens, they create internal resistance that make them difficult to maintain. When they feel like ways of taking care of yourself and supporting your well-being, they become naturally appealing. This shift in perspective transforms your relationship with habits from one of forcing and controlling to one of nurturing and supporting. You're not imposing behaviors on yourself. You're creating conditions that allow your best self to emerge naturally. Effective integration takes time and experimentation. You need to discover what combinations of habits work well together for your specific life circumstances, preferences, and goals. But once you find approaches that feel natural and sustainable, maintaining them requires much less ongoing effort and motivation. The goal is creating a lifestyle where good habits feel like natural expressions of who you are, rather than external requirements you must remember to fulfill. When integration is successful, your habits become invisible infrastructure that supports everything else you want to do and become. The practice that changes everything. Now that you understand the foundations, here's how to build a personalized habit system that will transform your daily life while feeling natural and sustainable, rather than forced or overwhelming. Start with just one habit that strongly reinforces your desired identity. Don't try to change everything at once. Focus on establishing one keystone habit that will create positive ripple effects throughout your life. Choose something that feels meaningful and achievable rather than impressive or dramatic. Design this habit to be ridiculously easy to start. Make it so simple that you'd feel silly not doing it. If you want to start exercising, commit to putting on workout clothes each day. If you want to start writing, commit to opening a document and writing one sentence. If you want to start meditating, commit to sitting quietly for 1 minute. This isn't about lowering your standards. It's about creating momentum and establishing the identity pattern. Once you consistently perform the minimum version, you'll often naturally want to do more. And even when you don't expand beyond the minimum, you're still reinforcing your desired identity every single day. Connect this habit to an existing routine that already happens automatically. Use your morning coffee, your commute, your lunch break, or your bedtime routine as anchors for the new behavior. The more established the existing routine, the more reliable it will be as a trigger for your new habit. Track your habit in the simplest way possible. This might be putting a check mark on a calendar, moving a paperclip from one jar to another, or using a basic habit tracking app. The goal isn't detailed analysis. It's creating a visual representation of your identity reinforcement that provides immediate satisfaction and motivation. Focus on consistency over perfection. Your goal is to perform the habit more days than you miss it, not to maintain a perfect streak. When you miss a day, get back on track immediately rather than waiting for Monday or next month to start over. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the beginning of a pattern. Pay attention to how performing the habit makes you feel about yourself. Notice the sense of integrity and identity alignment that comes from following through on your commitment. This internal satisfaction is what will sustain the habit long term, not external rewards or tracking metrics. After several weeks of consistent performance, you can gradually expand the habit if it feels natural to do so. Add more time, frequency, or complexity only when the current version feels truly automatic and effortless. Rushing this expansion is one of the most common ways people sabotage otherwise successful habits. Once your first habit is well established, you can consider adding a second habit using the same process, but resist the temptation to add multiple habits simultaneously. This usually leads to doing none of them consistently rather than all of them perfectly. Most importantly, remain flexible and compassionate with yourself throughout the process. Building habits that stick is a skill that develops over time. Each attempt teaches you something valuable about what works for your unique personality, circumstances, and preferences. Some habits will stick immediately, others will require multiple attempts before they feel natural, and some may need to be modified or replaced as your life circumstances change. All of this is normal and expected, rather than evidence of failure. The deeper transformation. As you develop skill in building habits that stick, something profound happens that extends far beyond improved behaviors or achieved goals. You begin to discover that the process of habit formation is actually the process of conscious identity creation, deliberately choosing who you want to become and taking consistent action to make that identity real. This realization transforms your entire relationship with personal change. Instead of feeling like you're constantly fighting against your natural tendencies or forcing yourself into uncomfortable molds, you begin to experience growth as the natural expression of your evolving identity. Your confidence grows not from achieving perfect performance, but from developing trust in your ability to make commitments to yourself and follow through on them. Each habit you successfully establish becomes evidence that you can change, that you can become the person you want to be, that your identity is not fixed, but continuously evolving based on your choices. This self-trust has ripple effects throughout your entire life. You become more willing to take on challenges because you trust your ability to develop whatever habits or skills the challenge requires. You become more authentic in your relationships because your actions consistently align with your values. You become more resilient during difficult periods because your habits provide stability and identity continuity even when external circumstances are chaotic. The habits themselves often become less important than the identity they represent and the self-trust they create. Exercise becomes less about fitness and more about being someone who takes excellent care of themselves. Reading becomes less about accumulating information and more about being someone committed to continuous learning. Meditation becomes less about stress reduction and more about being someone who prioritizes inner awareness and wisdom. This shift from outcome-focused to identity-focused habit formation creates what researchers call intrinsic motivation. Behaviors you engage in because they align with who you are, rather than because of external rewards or pressures. Intrinsically motivated habits are far more sustainable because they don't depend on external circumstances or temporary enthusiasm. You also develop what I call change mastery, the understanding that any behavior can become automatic through patient, intelligent practice. This removes the mystery and frustration from personal development and replaces it with confidence and clear methodology. Perhaps most importantly, you begin to see that your daily habits are actually your most powerful tool for creating the life you want. Not through dramatic transformations or heroic efforts, but through small, consistent actions that compound over time to create remarkable results. Your habits become the foundation for everything else you want to accomplish. They provide the energy, focus, skills, and identity necessary to pursue meaningful goals and create positive impact. They transform you from someone who wishes things were different to someone who actively creates the changes they want to see. When you master the art of building habits that stick, you discover that you're not just changing what you do, you're changing who you are. And from that place of authentic identity and consistent action, anything becomes possible. The person you become through developing strong habits is someone who can adapt to any circumstances, pursue any meaningful goal, and create positive change in any area of life. The habits themselves are just the beginning. They're the foundation for becoming the kind of person who can live with purpose, integrity, and continuous growth. This is the deepest gift of learning to build habits that stick, discovering that you have far more power to shape your life and identity than you ever imagined. The limitations you thought were permanent features of your personality become temporary constraints that dissolve through intelligent, patient practice. Your future becomes something you actively create through daily choices rather than something that happens to you. And that shift from passive to active, from victim to creator, changes everything about how you experience life itself. True habit mastery isn't about perfect discipline or flawless execution. It's about developing such a clear sense of who you want to become that expressing that identity through consistent action feels natural, meaningful, and deeply satisfying. When you reach that point, habits don't stick because you force them to. They stick because they're authentic expressions of who you are.